I wanted to have a crack at making a camper, and I've seen now I had an old one with canvas that was a bit leaky, so I thought I'd have a crack. I started seeing all these foam ones, foam campers. I thought, geez, that'd be a good idea if I can pull it off. But sit back and let's watch along as Crazy Andy tries to make himself a foam camper trailer. G'day folks, Andy here from McDowell Manor. I've been playing with the camper trailer. Now what I noticed was inside had leaked a bit. So I got some spray and I resealed all the canvas, but I thought, oh, what I'll also do is put a roof on. So this is all pretty well, they're just fence palings, and that's a polycarbonate sheet. It's not iron to keep it light. Now there's a lot of screws, especially on the front. Every downward drop in the corrugation got a screw through it into the metal for the most part. It should hold. There's screws across the middle into those boards, and there's a bunch of screws on the end here as well. So I'm hoping I can hit 100 k's and the polycarb won't just tear off. But I guess the way to find out the answer is sometime I'm going to have to give it a test run. Great. Might do that late at night when no one's around. The thing, I had a double bed in it, which took up way too much room, so I've pulled out that fixed frame bed and I'm going to make a new one that in the day, it's a pull out, so in the day it'll slide up to be like a couch with the mattress, which is a fold up mattress. I'll fold it up, that'll give me a back and a seat to sit on, so in the day I'll have all the extra room. Not turning out, it's not going to be a quick job, as you can see. It took me ages to get that bloody roof on. Now the other thing I've done is I've swapped a lot of equipment out. The lino floor went in, well it's kind of roughly in, it needs to be all trimmed up and fixed up, but I want to see what happens inside first. I got the bed made, I just raised it a little bit to try and make it so that the fridge would slide in and out easy, which it does, which is great. Then unfortunately the bed height was then far too high for where the old roof was, which was attached. You can still see the holes on this bar here. That's where the old tent roof brackets used to be attached. So I had no room, I couldn't even sit up. So that's what triggered me to, right, let's have a look and see if there's a cheap and easy way for a dill like me to have a crack at making something himself. Hence, the foam trailer came into being. You can see what I'm doing. Just taking these ribs, that's the support structure for the old tent. So I'm taking that right off. And then we'll start and add the foam sides in, I hope. Bloody hell. Well, it's been gorilla glued on, clamped into place. We'll see if tomorrow she's held. Squeezed a bit of glue out. The plan eventually is to fill a lot of this with that foam spray, and the same will have to happen up under there. I'll just spray foam along there. Bob's your uncle, I reckon. Eventually I'll work out how I'm gonna fill some of those gaps. You know, worst comes to worst, I'll spray foam. But hopefully, now I know I've got to peel that outside foil off, but that's a job for later. That's neither here nor there. Well, first panel's on. Wait and see the result. That glue, holy hell, that's as hard as anything. So that's well and truly stuck on. I've dented it a bit where the clamps were, but that's just a bit of filler. That's a bit of a mess, Andrew, you dill. Anyway, we'll see what we end up doing about that. Right, you do learn pretty quickly as you go along. So what I've done this time is I've gone right down past where that metal edge of the trailer is, that my fingers are on there, and that'll stop me having to foam spray up under it, because it should glue to the top of the trailer, well, the top bit down there. You can see that's where I cut off on the other side. That nestled nicely, sat on top of it. Well, I'm going to sit beside it, and I think that'll make a much more weatherproof seal. I've fitted that in, dropped that down a lot better. Now we have the structure for 2 walls glued on. Well, I emphasise that's really only, well, it's not even right to call it, it's the substrate, let's call it that. So that's what the poor man's fiberglass is going to stick to the outside of. Whew, if it all goes to plan. But of course I've still got to put a front on. Then I've got to work out how I'm going to do the back. Then I've got to work out how I'm going to do windows without having to pay for expensive caravan windows, which is something I really don't want to do. But we'll see. So you can see what I've done here is I've got a piece that I'm gonna, and you can see it's got a steel bracket behind the foam, so I'm gonna run a panel out 400mm to make like a cupboard, and I'm gonna bring it back in level back here and then sitting on top of there. And the idea is I want to start and get a bit of make it slightly more aerodynamic. And then the top, then the only panels that I've got are fiberglass, I think, before they go up, is the interior roof. And that's not a big problem. That's a pretty straightforward, easy, slap some fiberglass on, poor man's fiberglass on, and bung 2 big panels up, overhanging, hopefully fairly much out to the edge, so that'll provide some extra water protection as well. Alright, that's where we're up to. So I started using that spray expanding foam. Holy shit, they're not kidding, are they? I didn't think I'd put anywhere near that much. In fact, I was worrying, I'll probably have to go back at some stage and fill it. Well, I don't think so, Andrew. Everywhere I've used it, it's the same. Including the inside bottom there. I did put that front on, the flat front. I'll show you what my thinking is. Actually glue, that also the Gorilla Glue expands, which is what I wanted. That way there won't be water gaps. Pretty confident. I'll just cut that away, and then you can see I should be able to wrap right up to the bottom edge there. Just run over, and I'll probably go across the inside as well. That way both sides of this will be fiberglassed. I'm also going to use some metal brackets up on the top here towards the back and screw it into the metal frame. That'll hold it in place. Well, that answers that question. Cuts like butter. How good is that, eh? Well, the first roof panel's on, albeit somewhat messy, as you can see, but I really did want to make sure it didn't leak. Why do I bugger up? You can see that's not flush. Oh, that's not flush. I'll just cut that back. The back's flush. You can see I've filled the billio out of it. Oh, I don't want it bloody leaking. This side, what I've done is I started spraying foam up under there, as you can see from the mess, and realised I could see it on the other side. So what I did was I just thought, wow, okay, so I came down from the top. And I decided that was such a good idea, I did it on both sides. You can see it right there. Alright. Bit messy, but it'll clean up. I decided not to go to the middle, the centre, mostly because I've got an extractor fan I want to put in. I think I'll put it in up this end towards the back, probably. But anyway, you got the idea. Jeez, it's messy again. You can see the entire roof is on now, and it's been sprayed with foam. I'll show you up the top in a minute. I've picked all the foam off there. And I've tidied that up a lot better than it was. Quite happy with that now. Still haven't done the front. That's because I'm still dicking about putting foam and stuff in there. I knew I would be. Let's get up on the ladder and show you that roof. See, that's where I've cut it. It doesn't have to be particularly neat, it's only the bloody roof. Same with the front, you can't see any of that, well, not the cut off bit anyway. And that'll provide extra water seal, I figure. And like I say, I've foamed now from both sides as well as Gorilla Glued where I thought it was going to hold. So we'll trim all that up. We've got ourselves a roof, folks. The old dodgy one didn't have to stay on after all. Bit of trim to a little bit of trimming to do, but not to worry, I'll get there. The only external panels to go now is that front cupboard. That'll be good. Oh, that big piece of tape under the clamp, it's coming off, but I stripped it back so I could put the foam in the gap from the bottom as well as from the top. Whew, she's coming together, folks. Can't wait to get that cupboard on, because then it's pretty much only the back door kitchen that I've got to do. There's the back. I've got to work out how to cope with that. I think I've come up with a cunning plan. I'll talk about that more when we get there. What you can see looking inside there is the roof's clearly sagged in the middle, and that's because the only way I had of holding it up, in fact, was tape, and it's obviously sagged. So I'll show you the consequence of that on the top of the roof. I don't doubt that's watertight, but the fall's not right, and it's going to sit right in the joint. So that real thin ply there, because remember this is just a substrate, it's not providing me any strength. I'm going to put on top of the metal bracket and that'll cover it, and then I'll putty the end so it's a nice smooth surface and the water will run properly. I'm not terribly worried about up the back, although I may end up doing something with that as well. But let's get this well and truly sealed up and puttied and looking relatively pretty, and then we'll put the fiberglass on. A lot of what I've relied on is the Gorilla Glue expands in the joins. Now obviously when I put this on, I don't want glue that's going to expand and push it up. So I'm going to use the Tight Bond, which is what we use as well for the same reason on the poor man's fiberglass when it starts going up. So that is the expanding Gorilla Glue, and then I just fill any gaps. And you can see normally it does a pretty good job, and if there's any big gaps I use the spray foam, and that's what that is. And largely it's been working quite well, as you can see. And the plan was I'll putty up any rough edges with the wood putty. Now be careful what putty you choose. I did a bit of research and ended up with, in Australia it's backfiller, which is a shortened version of spackle I found, and spackle does not melt foam, which is what we want. So I'm pretty much hoping that's going to do the trick. Like I say, I'll spackfill along the front edge and the side edge, wherever that ends up there, and I'll probably spackfill under there anyway just to make sure. So you can see what I'm doing. I'll spackfill that edge there, and some of this that hasn't managed to seal properly, and I'll probably do a similar what I've done there. I'll do along the back here, I think, and then it can be all she can be all bloody fiberglass safely. Then it'll get the roof fiberglass together. There's a few gaps that I'll fill from the inside. What I've decided I'm going to do along the front here, because it was uneven, is run it as a 45-degree angle, so I'll spackfill it to that as well. I marked out the windows. You can see where I poked through, and then I marked out, no, you can't see anymore because I covered it up. I marked, oh yeah you can, there you go. I marked out where I wanted the edge of that roughly to come to, so it helped me even it a lot better. Bit of a trick to get it level when you don't have the tools, the right tools. Just do the best I can, I figure. I thought I'd show you this rather than wait till it was done. The hinges I had to cut around. So you can see I had now. The plan is I'm going to put one in the middle Run from there to there, and then one over the top here, and that should stop the rain from going in the hinge joints. I had to cut it back to get it to open, which exposed a bit more in places like that than I wanted. So what I did was I added this side flare that comes up, and that should keep the worst of it out. And I'll probably putty to get that line nice and straight. It's a bit of a bugger because to get it to open, you've got to be pretty precise. You can see the expanding Gorilla Glue behind. Hopefully we'll fix most of that. I'll show you the other side. Also a bit dicky because I've got to be able to get that latch up to flip it over to open the door and then push it down. So, went too far, but the beauty of foam is you can add a bit back in. I'm quite happy with that. And what I think I'll do is I'll actually add a handle up here, so I could just flick that up, unlock it, grab the handle and open it. So I had the same, I wanted to make sure there was no way water was going to get in, so I've added another one of those flares, and I'll just fill that gap up the top. I've got a little tiny square of this stuff that I'll put in. You can see I've cut it on an angle there, so that should allow it in, but if it's not, I'll just increase the angle. First window's in. Well, it's not in, but it's cut out. It's out. Maybe it's better to say the first window's out. So I was tempted, in fact, to put foam over top of that grid. But I think it's much more useful like this because, as you can see, I can just add straps, stretchy straps, and hold the stuff I need to carry. So I'll always at least have 2 chairs. The big table may or may not come, but the solar panel at the end, the black thing there, that'll go in. So having it like this is really very useful. So that square that I drew is the template for where the air vent hatch is going to go. So I've got a little 12 volt motorised fan that goes in it. That just winds up. You wind up a handle and that opens up the lid. Mind all the crap I'm getting inside of the house painted. So a lot of stuff that I had in the garage had to come out and get put in the trailer, which is a bit of a mess, but that doesn't matter. And there it is there. I should be able to just push that up through. I've put it at a high point and the battery box will go on a shelf there, so it's fairly close to power for ease of wire. And up she pops. This got me thinking, you know, if you wanted to put another, because like the windows where I used, I kept the foam to use its panel for instead of glass, you could do the same there and just put a little bloody latch on the side here to hold that up. That'd certainly vent it. I mean, I'm happier with the fan, don't get the wrong idea. I'm just saying that out loud in case someone else thinks, oh yeah, I could do that in mine. You can see that perfectly goes down. It's got screw holes, so I'll probably screw it and then I'll fiberglass over top of them. Pretty snazzy, eh? Wow, there you go, folks. There you go, there's our vented air hatch. There's the wiring on the other side, so that'll connect to the battery, obviously. There's a little switch that turns it off and on, and there's a little thing that you turn to get the hatch up and down. And it's got a shroud that goes over the inside as well, just to dress it nicely. Actually thinking I might type bond glue that down rather than screw it on, because I mean, I could put a wall mate, a little one in there with a couple of little screws. I've seen them do that with foamies. I actually think the bloody glue would be a better one. And then once I've fiberglassed right up to the end here, it ain't going nowhere. Well, I do think, in fact, that's the bulk of the structural build on the outside done. There's a few things I'll tidy up. So those hinge covers on the back, I'll tidy that up. I'm going to cut off a whole lot here. Doesn't need to be there anymore since I worked out I could put that one on there. and it still opens. I've tested that. Anyway, the bulk of the outside is done. So with that, I think what I'm going to do is put the video up, and part 2 will be where I start dicking about inside, where I build the kitchen and all sorts of excitement like that. So there you go, folks. I hope you've learned as much as me on this little journey, because it's been a real learning experience for me. And hopefully I'll see you next episode, eh? Alright, you have a good one, eh? Uru!